Thanks everyone for coming. This is the second in our live demo series, what we're calling the Community Live Demos, hosted by Preset. This live demo is focused on kind of the key principles of building beautiful and effective dashboards, and I'll get into a little bit about what I really mean by that. So a little bit about Preset. So Preset, we're really the Superset experts. Superset was started at Airbnb by Max, pictured here. Before that, he also started the Airflow project. So he's really been in the data engineering and the analytics space for over a decade now. And Superset was really created because of the challenges specifically around visualization, dashboarding, business intelligence, in this new age of the modern data stack. So if you're using Druid, you're using Presto, you're using a variety of different components in your stack, how do you ensure that the top of the experience, which is the visualization, the dashboards, the things that are really keeping your business up and running today, continue to work even as your data stack and your backend changes and moves quickly. So that's kind of a little bit about the project and the genesis. At Preset, we have kind of established ourselves as the experts, and we really are the kind of unofficial stewards, and we help guide the project in general. We spend a lot of time contributing code and documentation, as well as host events like this to the community. And we also offer what we call Preset Cloud, which is currently in beta, the hosted version of Superset, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So a little bit about myself. So I'm Shrini. I'm a senior developer advocate at Preset. I'm a data scientist turned educator. So I spent a few years working at a few different organizations, learning data science, building pipelines, really seeing how data science is done in small and large organizations, and then spent 5 years at DataQuest, which is a popular online learning platform for data science. I spent a lot of time writing courses, helping folks learn the popular topics in data science. And I joined Preset because I was kind of frustrated with the existing business intelligence, data viz tools out there, and wanted to make a dent in help make that tool set better. Fun fact about me, I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So a little bit about myself. So I think to address the obvious point, like what actually makes a dashboard beautiful? I think we've in the modern age of digital media, data journalism, we're kind of bombarded with visualizations and dashboards. But if you really dig into what makes a dashboard beautiful, in many ways, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So let's dive a little bit deeper into like what the beholder is, like what are the personas that are really important here. And I think the best book and resource for anyone who is looking to understand how to build effective dashboards, really wants to master this whole landscape, is Information Dashboard Design by Stephen Few, who's a well-known business intelligence consultant and really a thought leader here. So if you look at the way he organizes design and beauty and effectiveness as it relates to dashboards, he really frames it in terms of these three pillars. So you have strategic, you have operational, you have analytical. So strategic is really, let's kind of show the information, the key numbers. He even literally calls out big numbers, which is part of the inspiration for our own chart type, big number. Really focus on just showing the key metrics, really as numerical values. That could be profit and loss. It could be uptime percentages, right? Things that are really interesting at the highest level. And the single most important thing here is just speed. So someone should be able to look at a strategic focused dashboard and quickly understand the most important details of the business or the operation or what have you. As we move a little bit more detail oriented, you have operational. So this is more, how do you actually support the information that's shown at the strategic level? So if you have 99% uptime as a KPI, how do you actually visualize the charts that are related to that? You might see a big spike or a dip in a certain type of log event that you're looking for, right? So this starts to actually attempt to show initial causes for what's actually underlying and driving the strategic big numbers that are being shown. And lastly, you have analytical. So this is really getting away from just showing basic numbers and actually empowering the user to perform more exploratory data analysis. So, bring in their own domain expertise, their own goals, and really kind of help people get way more granular and specific with their data, and do things like filtering data, compare and contrast over time. So this is kind of very much the opposite side of strategic. It's a lot more detail oriented. And it's very difficult. I will say, I think analytical is one of the hardest use case designed for, because you have to kind of empower people to do all kinds of crazy filtering, cross filtering, drill downs, while also making sure that they're not making any obvious mistakes. Like, let's say you just completely divide out a certain category of a data set that you're looking at. So this is like a high level picture. I think this, Stephen talks about these things as very maybe divisive, but they're really more blended in the real world. This is a quick overview that he talks about, right? So the C-level might be interested in strategic, managers are maybe more operational, and specialists, people that are domain specialists are really deep in the details. They're a lot more analytical. So let's switch over to actually looking at some examples and see how we can start to apply these, and then build on that to learn how we can further customize dashboards. So this is a screen you see after, this is, the Preset Cloud beta. So when you log in, you see a bunch of workspaces. Each workspace is a separate Superset instance. And once you click into one, you're pretty much exactly what you're in a Superset instance. So it's exactly what you'd imagine. You have your nav bar, you have your list of dashboards, things like that. So the first one I wanted to look at is what we call the Superset community metrics. So we're, as a dashboarding and data viz company, we spend a lot of time looking at metrics and helping us try to understand how things are going. Open source is an interesting kind of community, and how do we really try to get the best out of it, and know really how we can support the community. And so this work is actually based on a blog post that Max has released back in April, called Open Sourcing a GitHub Engagement Dashboard. So if you look at this dashboard, right, if we look at the pillars we mentioned earlier about strategic, operational, analytical, this has all of it. You have the KPIs at the top, you have strategic, the key metrics, which is even like what, how popular is Superset, right? Like how many PRs, pull requests are being made, how many people are vaguely interacting. So this has high level metrics. And then this also has some of the more focused and detailed analytical views as well. So in this case, you can actually see PRs made by an organization. And so you'll see Airbnb, Polydia, other, Preset, obviously we're pretty big contributors to the Superset project. And so this is kind of an example of like, how do you use all three modes of dashboarding to actually put together a cohesive picture that's useful for all three personas. And also, before I forget, if you have any questions, there is a Q&A tab at the bottom of Zoom. So please ask any questions there, and at the end we can explore some of those and try to answer them. So this is, this is kind of takes the best of all three and combines them. So how do you actually, by default, Superset comes with a lot of great aesthetics and colors. But if you actually want to impose your own context and color things in a specific way, the best way to do that is by actually customizing the colors yourself. So if you click the pencil, you'll get into kind of edit mode. You hit the triple dots and you end up in edit dashboard properties. So this is in the latest version of Superset, we've kind of cleaned this up a little bit. We have the basic view and the advanced view. So here is kind of the JSON metadata that's really powering the styling of this dashboard. So you'll notice down here that So you'll see the label colors, right? So every chart that's emitting this label, so Polydia, you have Dropbox, Preset, Lyft, Airbnb, others. These were not generated by Superset. We've actually explicitly added them in. So this is where you would have to go if you have a bunch of charts with common dimensions and labels that you actually want highlighted and colored the exact same way. So this edit view is really the secret weapon to helping kind of stylize and colorize your dashboard. So this is so I'll hit discard for now. So this is an example of a dashboard that's pretty focused on both strategic and I would say operational. And even down here, you can see a list of GitHub issues and if you're someone on the front lines, you can actually dive in and click on the issue and get into the details. So in the second example, this is a visualization of survey data from Free Code Camp. So this is, if you actually go to the first tab, you'll see kind of at the top, right, the same thing I mentioned earlier, which is the key strategic KPIs are at the top, which is the number of people that are responding. This survey is focused on understanding the number of aspiring versus current developers and the different kind of trade-offs and challenges that they faced. And so if we were to add some color to this dashboard, there's many different ways we could do that. So you'll notice here that the label categories are actually very different. So you have minority status visualized as a pie chart. You have gender and developer type. These don't really share the same labels. You don't have male and female for all three of these charts, right? So how do you, how would you actually colorize something like this? And one approach you can do is actually, and this is where the domain context comes in, and the problem you're trying to solve is really important. If this survey is really focused on actually understanding the barriers that the underrepresented groups in all three of these questions, because they're all questions that are asked in the survey. If you really want to emphasize that in the dashboard, you can go and edit the JSON to do just that. So you go to edit, you go to dashboard properties, as I mentioned earlier. And so what you can actually do is for, let's say, this first chart, minority status, if we wanted to edit that, we could actually make all of the categories where it's a smaller percentage of the majority are responding. You can all set that to black if we wanted to, for example. So let's make this, so no, yes, an ethnic minority. Let's make this black. Let's make, in this case, for the survey, females are unfortunately underrepresented. And so we'll also emphasize them as the same color. And then between aspiring and current developer, we can also colorize that a little bit differently. And let's actually find a different color for male. Maybe for now we'll use, we'll recycle this existing color. So if we hit save, save again, and then refresh, oops. You can actually see that all of these, oh, this didn't get applied. But you can see that, in the case of minorities, oh, sorry, I may have made a typo here. So let's change male. Yeah, that's the mistake I made. Okay, make this color, make that black again. Edit this. So now if we hit save, this should work as expected. So it's saved. Yeah, so the minority categories now are clearly highlighted. So then even as we filter the data, right, if let's say we really wanted to zoom in on these folks, then if we hit apply, then these should become full black minus the null values. So so that's the kind of colorizing that you can do, and you can get pretty creative here. There's a lot depending on the type of problem you're solving. So in this second tab, right, there's many different things that we're visualizing here, and these pie charts, even the heat maps, you can change the way that the color is being specified. So next, I wanted to talk a little bit about fonts. So fonts are a fun one. In this example, this is actually a Slack dashboard. So this is a visualization of our Slack community for Superset. Slack has an API, and you can we actually written on our blog how to create this type of dashboard exactly step by step if that's something you're interested in doing. So again, right, we got the KPIs up top. We have this medium level of trends in the middle. And then we have very fine-grained details on cross-channel relationships. How are people posting and activating in pairwise relationships, which is a lot more niche and specific. And so, you know, the one of the things we can think about customizing here is the fonts. So so this section right here, these two are your two superpowers for being able to customize a dashboard in terms of aesthetics. So every dashboard has a CSS template that's being rendered. And one of the nice things actually is you can go to, if you click on, oops, let me X out of this one. So if you actually click here, add a discard, and you go to settings, has to refresh. If you go to settings, CSS templates, you can actually see a full list of templates. It just ships with two simple ones, Courier Black and Flat. And they're both editable CSS templates, but you can also edit the dashboard CSS live and see the changes. It actually is evaluating real time. It's literally editing what the browser is interpreting. So we go to edit CSS. Let's say, you know, we're feeling really ambitious with our font research. We've decided to go with Comic Sans MS, right? That's everyone's favorite font, right? So we hit X, we hit save, and it's like it didn't get updated. Hold on. Edit CSS. Comic Sans. Did I spell it wrong? Let's try it over here. Oh, live demos. So let's try this again. So we pick Courier Black. This is our cool matrix in the future terminal font. And then we change this to Comic Sans MS. This should work. Oops. And there you go. So now you have the joys of your maybe high school or middle school, you know, office lessons where you're getting really excited about using Comic Sans. So anyway, so that's kind of an overview. We discussed to go back to my slides. So we discussed the different types of dashboards. You know, I highly recommend this book, Information Dashboard Design, if you're really interested in this material. We kind of talked about how to customize the colors in your dashboard and then how to actually change fonts. The last thing I did want to cover real quick while we still have some time is adding logos. So one of the cool things is that this dashboard, you can actually add a markdown element. So the way if you look at the code for this, actually, it's really just a iframe. So you'll notice here, for people familiar with HTML, you know, iframe source, and we're just pointing to the Slack logo. I generally recommend SVG for this, because then it'll just, Superset, we will just scale it down because it's really just another HTML container. And then the key is to set scrolling to no, and then just to close the iframe tag. And once you do that and you click outside, for the first time, you already have Slack cache, but the first time you add a new SVG logo, Superset will pull it in and it'll render it right here. You hit save, and then you can kind of customize a dashboard this other way, which could be another kind of cool way to add some flair. So yeah, that's the live demo. What questions do folks have? Let me pull up the Q&A now. So open questions. What is the big difference between preset versus superset? It looks like Alan is typing. Really, the main difference is this, as well as single sign-on. So this gives, you know, this is Preset Cloud. This gives you access to a bunch of different Superset workspaces. And if we actually log out right here, you'll notice this sign-in screen. So you can actually log in with SSO. We use Okta, which is pretty popular for identity management in companies. We also support login with Google. And then you can basically log in and manage your Superset workspaces this way. So we have Preset Cloud in beta right now. If you're interested in that, feel free to follow up with us. And the rest of this year, we're pretty committed to Superset and helping get that to 1.0. But from a feature standpoint, once you're actually in the dashboard, we're running the same Superset. We're not the kind of company that's going to run a different fork of Superset. We run the latest version of Superset in production for our customers. Leo asks, is it possible to put a single legend for the whole dashboard instead of per chart? That's a good question. I'm trying to think. I actually haven't really encountered a situation where I've really tested that. So, one thing to think about is that, a dashboard really is just really consists of many superset chart objects. So one of the challenges right now is that how do you actually have a single legend when, each chart could even come, each chart on a dashboard could come from an entirely different database. We really encourage people to, Superset supports that mixing of chart types, chart data sources. So creating a single legend for the whole dashboard isn't really possible. I'd say the closest you can get right now is using a filter box where at least, if I still have this open. So this is, it's not quite a legend, but it is a way to filter values in your dashboard. And it could be another way, and this filter applies to the entire dashboard tab by default. So that could be another way of getting what you're, accomplishing the same goal. Leah asked another question. How many charts do you recommend per dashboard for performance? So I think there's two important angles of performance. There's the human side, I would say, of performance, and then there's the browser performance, the technical performance. So I think the human side, I'll quickly address. I mean, I definitely, the reason we've added tabs to Superset is because humans really are not good at looking at many, many different types of charts at once. We're really good. Visualizations really thrive at highlighting outliers and letting you compare and contrast really quickly. So in general, I don't really recommend putting more than 5 or 10 charts in a single tab unless you have a very specific reason to do so. Use multiple tabs and even multiple dashboards. There's really no limitation there. On the browser performance side, it really depends. It really just depends on your browser's ability, right? Like the amount of RAM and CPU that you have, and any bottlenecks that Chrome or whatever browser you're using, the limitations it runs into. And also it really depends on the resource usage of the charts themselves. If you're doing lots of Sankey diagrams or really advanced area charts where you have millions of data points, the browser is going to struggle to render it. And so part of it is you really just have to kind of test this for yourself. It's pretty low friction to trying it out. And we're still also we're continuing to make performance improvements here. So I don't really have a great single concise answer. It really depends on the amount of data you're visualizing, the complexity of the visualization, the amount of dynamicness that you're trying to support. But if you wanted to use just a single metric to understand this, number of data points, just the less data, summarize it, right? Like humans are not good at looking at millions of data points. Summarize the data, turn into pie charts, into bar charts, area charts, and condense the information. So we answered that live. Is there an easy way to manage different dashboards for different user levels? I have problems with data sources and roles. So if you go to our Superset Docs website, I believe it's just superset.patg.org. So if you're running the Superset on your own, we do cover a little bit on the roles side. How do you actually manage the different roles? And if there's not great documentation, definitely ping us and we can add more. But we do have a roles model. So in Superset, roles and access are managed through Flask Application Builder. And so there is a way to manage the permissions there, and you can even enable things like row level security. And if you really want to take it to the next level, people usually go one of two ways. They integrate Superset into their SSO and IAM system internally. So whatever, Okta or something else, and that's going to be highly dependent on your infrastructure, your cloud setup. The other option, obviously, is Preset Cloud. We do have SSO and more advanced role-based access control built in, and so that's another way that you can kind of get maybe the permissions that you're looking for. Anna asks how to keep a particular order of the categorical data in a bar chart, not rename it as one name, two name, three name. Yeah, this is a great question. This is probably one of the most common questions I get. As far as I know, there's actually not a great way to do this. I was speaking to someone else a few days ago, and I think I told them the same thing that I'll tell you, which is, unfortunately, your best bet is actually probably to rename the data. Some charts do let you sort by other values, but most don't. So for now, I would say, short of creating a custom visualization, the best thing to do is bust out SQL Lab, create a custom view, or launch an explore session from the results of a query, and use that to create a visualization that's ordered the way you want. Over time, this is definitely something I predict that we will fix and allow you to customize. But for right now, we don't have an obvious way to do this. Maxim asks, are you planning some features to make dashboards more mobile friendly? Custom CSS does not cover everything. That's a great question. This is something we do get from time to time. I personally would love to see the mobile support improved a lot. We do have customers all over the world where mobile is an important use case, especially for dashboards. We don't have any immediate plans to improve the mobile compatibility, but it is something we do have a roadmap, and that's the best place to follow along on when we're going to do that. But there's nothing. I don't have any great news. It's definitely not something we're doing in the next few weeks. It's a rather big undertaking to support that. Cool. So we're kind of at time. I'm happy to stick around and answer any other questions that people have. Feel free to also ping me on Slack or over email afterwards as well. My email is just Shrini, SRINI, at preset.io. And we'll also have a recording of this for folks to look at. Is it possible to have dashboard display without being logged in? Yes, it is possible. We do have something called, we have some very basic functionality for what we call public dashboards. In Superset, there is a way, at the TLDR is you really have to figure out from the roles and access perspective of Superset, how do you create a public role? And then you just basically share that URL so that people don't have to be logged in to use Superset. I'll try to track this down, but actually the Environmental Defense Fund has a dashboard. They have a public dashboard, and they're running Superset. And if you look at it, it's actually a little bit hard to tell that it's Superset, but they're running a public version of Superset, and they did exactly that. So that's one way you can do it. It's just create is to figure out the role that lets you access. I think it's either called Gamma or something else. We can add some documentation as a follow-up. But we are also excited to add public dashboards and Preset Cloud as another alternative. On an office on a screen, for example, Leo is following up. Yeah, I could definitely see that use case being popular. Amir asks, how can we use Python and RStudio libraries for analytics within Superset dashboards? That's a great question. Another common question we get is how does, I actually personally come from the PyData world, and I, used to use Python really every day. I'd say right now, Superset's pretty, we're pretty focused on databases and SQL. Like Superset can actually talk to any SQL speaking database or data engine, including engines like Presto and Dremio that or Athena that aren't even traditional relational database systems. And so we're pretty focused right now on supporting that and making that awesome. In some future, we would love to maybe add notebook support, where you can get the results out of one of the databases that you've connected, filtered down, and maybe in Python or R, the results set is exposed as a data frame. That seems to be a pretty common pattern in the BI space. A lot of our kind of other companions in the space do something like that. And so, yeah, right now, there's not really a great way to use Python and R. We're a little bit more focused on the business intelligence and data viz use case, where SQL is still the most popular tool. I would say your best bet, if you still do need to use Python or R, is to read data in from a database, do the transformation. Like you might have a Python data pipeline that's transforming the data, that's doing ELT, and then writing the data, ETL rather, and then writing the results set back to a SQL speaking database that then Superset can query. So right now, that's probably your best kind of workaround. There's no direct interface between Python and Superset. Rolf asks, is there a possibility to integrate the dashboard into another system like Salesforce? That's a good question. I think this probably needs a little bit more clarification from my perspective. Do you mean embedding the Superset dashboard within Salesforce, or do you mean using Salesforce data? If it's the latter, I mean, definitely, like, Salesforce has a pretty rich API. You can integrate Salesforce data source into your analytics pipelines, and then as long as it's in a SQL speaking data warehouse, data engine, database, Superset can talk to it and help you create dashboards. As I mentioned, there are people like the Environmental Defense Fund and others that have gotten Superset to work in a public dashboard facing way. So another, if you want to integrate a Superset dashboard into Salesforce somehow, I think that's trickier. You would need a public Superset instance working, and then maybe iframe that into somewhere in Salesforce. I'm not a Salesforce expert, unfortunately, so I'm probably not the best person to answer this question. So yeah.
That might be a good topic for another live demo, which is kind of showing some of the embedded use cases with Superset.
Yeah, agreed. Awesome. It looks like I think we're kind of at the end of questions. As I mentioned, if you have any follow-up, feel free to follow up with us over email, Twitter. Encourage everyone here to join our Slack community if you're not in it already. Thanks everyone for coming on a Tuesday. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. If you do have any feedback, feel free to share it with us. And we will also have a recording out as well. Thanks, everyone.